Good afternoon, my name is Marisa Gregory and I'm a senior at Married Hope Academy in Blue Springs, Missouri. Today the social matter that I'm talking about is how teen loneliness and misunderstanding has seemed to grow over time and how anxiety and depression has just become another common part of growing up, which should not be. But so basically statistics show that so many teens today feel just completely alone, even if they are surrounded by groups of people or community of people. And loneliness can quite literally happen anywhere, like in any environment, wherever you're going. So like school is a common one where you're just completely surrounded by people, but you don't really feel like presence in your life because not everybody understands what's going on with you. And then church and sports, or even like at your home where so many things get discussed, but mental health may not necessarily be one of those things. So me personally, there have been times where I feel just completely alone. There's multiple that I can recall, but specifically like last year I was in Comp 1 and 2. I don't remember which class it was, but we were writing about just like kind of testimony type stuff was the prompt that I had chosen. And so I included my childhood and all of the trials and tribulations that I had gone through, but I didn't really realize how alone I truly felt when all of that stuff was going on until I was kind of like looking back on it, and I just felt like a void, I guess. So like during like the 2 weeks that we had to write that assignment, I just kind of felt like nobody was choosing such a deep topic that I was, and mine just felt like super heavy compared to everybody else's. So I kind of just felt like everybody was here and I was on my own separate path that nobody was really going down. So according to American Psychological Association, loneliness among teens has began to increase a lot, and it's even growing to be a public concern on how so many teens just feel so alone all of the time. So this matters to me personally because I've experienced it myself, but I've also witnessed how like my friends and like my peers and people just like in my community have experienced this, and sometimes it's just hearing stories about like what they went up against, but nobody actually knew that they were going through that when it was like actually happening, because people just don't know how to express themselves in that way, especially when there's not people there that are asking how they are or checking in on them in that type of way. So the feeling of like loneliness or just anxiety like taking over your body can like it affects your confidence and like the way you feel about yourself, and like the way you kind of like the doubts that you have about yourself seem to just like escalate. And so it can even like get into like friendships and like relationships that you have with people in your life. Just the idea of feeling alone can kind of just creep into those relationships, and it just kind of isolates you in a way. But yeah, so like the feeling of loneliness isn't just like physically being alone. Like you can be surrounded by multiple people, but you still feel like nobody is there. So according to a report from Harvard Graduate School of Education, emotional loneliness is now one of the most common struggles among teens, even those that are involved in activities and social groups. So a time that I felt just like emotionally alone is probably just once again thinking back on my childhood and how heavy that was for me to carry. But now that I've like come to understand like faith and like my relationship with God, I began to like openly talk and explain like to people about like everything that I had faced, and it's like slowly just kind of mending everything that I had like gone through, and it's just kind of like weaving love back into everything that I had experienced. So one of the main reasons that many like researchers show, and like especially like me, I think that loneliness is certainly like increasing, like the feeling of it is increasing because of social media and like the rise of technology being such a constant thing in our lives. Like school, most schools Chromebooks, computers, everything's like online now. Nothing's really like paper pen based anymore. So a Pew Research Center reports that most teens feel pressured to appear perfect online, which contributes to loneliness and insecurity. So like one key thing to understand is that people would not be like putting out these videos online if they didn't want you to see how great their life is. And so they're only taking like the best parts out of their life and then putting it on the internet just to kind of show like what's happening in their life, and it kind of breaks other people down to kind of step back and like analyze themselves, and it begins to create like kind of strife among yourself, and it's just not healthy. However, part of that is, if you are a Christian, part of that is just understanding that your worth doesn't come from the world and like the things that are in it, but it comes from Him. And so seeing like what other people are experiencing in life, that's God's gift that He gave them, and He has a completely different thing for you in your life. And it's just like so important to understand, because I feel like so many people question like, oh, what is God going to do in my life? Or they start to compare themselves to other people. And so like this doesn't just happen on like a worldly view. This happens even as Christians. It's like, oh, I want God to take me along this path and do like with my life what He did to their life. But that's not how He works. He works in like unique and different ways, and He has a plan and a purpose for each of us, but it's not always the same thing. So another reason that like the loneliness feeling and anxiety is like on an increase is because there's less person to person like interactions, and because of technology, so many people grow relationships over a phone. And so it's just like words on a screen that you can easily just put out there, and then there could be like absolutely no meaning behind it, but people who are like receiving that are just processing it as, oh, I have a deep relationship with this person, even though it's not that. Because God, like all throughout the Bible, we see relationships and community and people always like around each other, supporting one another. And I mean, God is a God of relationships and community. So we're designed to have person-to-person interactions that's not over a phone. And then another thing that could be kind of playing a role into it is like parenting styles have had to completely shift with, once again, technology, but then like anxiety and depression just becoming so common. Parents have had to take a different approach to parenting. And so expectations are something that are like kind of like iffy. It's like, if this, then what? And then even just like busy schedules causes anxiety, because like so many people in like my life do like sports, band, school, they have homework, they have a church life that they maintain, all while trying to maintain a social life as well. So it just completely like packs your schedule, and it's just really hard to get super busy and not like recognize the true peace that you have, that God has provided in our lives. So the like faith section about like loneliness can impact teens, but God is still there for you to call upon, even though you do have that feeling of loneliness. And so I know whenever I feel anxious, I do begin to overthink a lot, like everything, and I start to look into like my future, and I'm like, if I'm not successful, if I don't get into this college, if I don't get enough grades, if I don't support my family, if I'm not, just a whole bunch of questions. But one verse that I chose whenever I was in 7th grade, I'm pretty sure it was 1 Peter 5:7, which is, cast all your anxieties on Him because He cares for you deeply. And that's like a Bible verse that has like resonated with me, that I get reminded of like all of the time. And it's like whenever I'm anxious, I pray using this Bible verse, and I'm like, God, just let your will be done and not mine. Like, let me have wisdom and understanding in my life, and please just guide me through what I'm going through. Like, another thing about Jesus is, I mean, he came to this earth and he experienced like loneliness and rejection, so he knows what it feels like to be betrayed and isolated. What? So he understands your loneliness more than anybody else. I mean, he was quite literally rejected so many times, betrayed by so many people, and so one time that I felt God's presence when I was like lonely is, I mean, even a few nights ago, I was like finishing my homework, and then I started to get stressed out about my homework, since this is like my first like full semester of college courses, and I just got super stressed and overwhelmed, and I'm just like, this is not your desire for my life to experience this anxiety. This is me praying to God, but I'm like, this is not your will for my life. You don't want me to feel all of this anxiety. Please just give me like the willpower and like the ideas to finish these assignments to the best of my ability. And like the last like real takeaway is that teen loneliness is a very real thing. Just because it's common doesn't degrade its worth any, because it's so common, I feel like it's also just easily overlooked in so many teens' lives. But that's not what God has called us for. He's called us to be together and in community. So really just whenever like we reach out to other people and just check in and then tell them about God and cast our anxieties on him, we can bring real comfort into those people's lives and even our own. And we can just really just praying peace over that person, and that God's hand will be over their life, and that he will guide them through whatever they're going through. And then also really just giving somebody a place to belong when nobody else has really offered them that is another really big thing, is just telling people that they belong where they are for a reason, because God has put us all here for a time and a place just as this.